Hi, welcome. I'm your host, BNEWS producer Sydney Bowles, here with Burlington Town Administrator Paul Sagarino for our monthly Town Administrator Update. Paul, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Sydney. I know it's the summer solstice right now, so
It is.
It's a great time for us to catch up.
Yeah, I was just talking about my plans for a summer solstice party. So that summer feeling is in the air, finally, hopefully.
We just need the sun to come out, so.
Yes, hopefully we can call it in with, or I can call it in with my party. Okay, so I've asked you here though, because even though it is summer, there's still a lot going on. So the first thing I want to talk about with you is kind of a little news blurb that folks got recently about the efforts to get our PFAS filters up and running. Folks were asked to conserve water for a little while they got that up and going, but then there was an extension of that. I imagine people have some questions about what was going on there, so what's the deal?
We have some final work that needs to be done to the actual mill pond treatment plant to get all the controls hooked up, and in order to do that, we needed to shut down the plant, which was the reason for Public Works requested that residents try to conserve water. They got about, I think, halfway through doing what they were going to do, and they had to shut it down because they had to bring the plant back online to create water for the next day. And we're probably a couple weeks away from having the all clear on the PFAS, so we're really excited about that. I know it's been delayed by a few months, but I'll still call it probably the quickest remediation of a water problem that I've ever seen. And it's actually the quickest appropriation of funding from start to finish to solve a problem from what I can see in the town's history. So kudos to Public Works Department, kudos to town meeting and all of our elected officials and the select board and Ways and Means for supporting the project. But other communities haven't even gotten out of first gear on the PFAS remediation, and due to the efforts of our Public Works Department, we're way ahead of the curve. So we're excited about that. We just, we're dying to give the all clear signal and just say, hey, the water's PFAS free.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like this has been a huge, years long effort. It is fast, but it's also a huge amount of work over a long period of time for that team. So it's a remarkable
It is, and it involved a lot of really smart things, ordering filters in advance. Many of the other communities are fighting for the same filters, so the supply chain issues. So a lot of things came together to allow us to do it so quickly. And I know that it doesn't seem very quick, but trust me, it's in the life of a government construction project, it was lightning quick.
Cool. So it sounds like in the next couple of weeks we should have another update on where that's going.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. So also going on right now is a repeat public comment period for the Winn View Heights II development. This was something that the select board voted on in January, but one person was absent. It was voted down with a 2-1-1 vote. It's kind of unusual. What is your thought process around this idea of having a repeat public hearing for a project like this?
Yeah, I think some residents may confuse it with some of the land use proposals. There are some contingencies within that process where if a project's brought forward and doesn't receive a favorable vote, that it can't be brought back for 2 years. But in the select board purview, it's more like a license application, I would say. It's an application for a letter of support. So there's actually no prohibition in the law. It could be brought back. It can be brought back as many times as a petitioner wants to put it before a board. If you think of, say, a liquor license or something that maybe got turned down and they come back to the drawing board. So it's a little bit different. And I do think that some residents were probably expecting it to function more like, some of the hearings on our land use side. And that's one of the tenets there is if they don't get a favorable vote, then they really can't bring it back for a couple of years. So I think that's where the confusion may lie.
So for folks who are just sort of tuning into this story, this is a 20-some unit development. It would be for people 55 and up, so senior housing. Some of the units would be designated affordable. But there are concerns from the community about the grade of the access road, potential environmental damage, and then noise and traffic things. Some of that is pretty common when you have developments. I think what might be a little more unusual is that the planning department and the conservation commission have both issued letters opposing this. Does that put a damper on it in terms of how you think about it, how the town is thinking about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. The pros and cons to it. I mean, the location is not ideal, but I think if we're honest about it, there are not many ideal locations in town. And I think what the intriguing thing for the select board is the creation of these 6 affordable units potentially. These are ownership units, which is something that we hear about a lot, that people want to sell their home and not rent. They want to own something. They will be very affordable, probably in the 200s, 250,
Pretty different than what a lot
280.
of houses go for around here.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's the balancing act, and not so ideal location, but the intriguing part of creating 6 affordable units for seniors, which is something that the board has heard on a regular basis, that people want more ownership opportunities. We have a lot of rental opportunities, and these units will be affordable in perpetuity with a deed restriction. So when the first person to occupy them goes to sell them, it goes to an affordable person at that time as well. So it's very successful affordable housing program. The most desirable units are the ownership units, and we don't have quite as many of them as we would like to have in the inventory. But offset that with the idea that we have a beautiful piece of land on a hill with trees, and it's not an ideal location to access. So those are the pros and cons, I think, that the board is weighing as they make their decision.
And this is expected to come up for a vote on Monday, is that right?
Correct. There was a town meeting bylaw that was passed, and what it basically said was the board can't vote the night they close the public hearing. So that was at our last meeting, so they'll be taking up the actual vote for it on Monday.
Okay.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, there we go, I'll be there. Last topic I want to cover with you is the select board recently had a strategic planning session at the Grandview, I think. Were you there for that?
Of course, yes.
Okay, so this is interesting to me just because it's like a secret special board retreat. I mean, it's not secret, but it's a board retreat. They're talking about upcoming stuff. On the list were accessory dwelling units.
Yep.
American Rescue Plan Act proposals and closeout, department structure and reorganization ideas, and the police station feasibility study. So if it's all right with you, I want to take those one by one.
Absolutely.
There's a lot in all of them. Accessory dwelling units. Mm-hmm. What's the conversation?
Well, I think BCAT recently did a program on affordable housing, and the topic of accessory dwelling units was raised. I think Select Board Member Runyon was there, maybe interviewed, as well as our Planning Director, Liz. And I think that idea and discussion about accessory dwelling units triggered some of the other board members to just start asking some questions. And I think Bedford, the town of Bedford, recently had a very successful town meeting warrant article to straighten out their accessory dwelling units zoning. So I think the board is interested in taking a look at that to see if that's possibly a way that we could provide more housing within certain limits within the town, and provide something that I think a lot of people are often looking for. When people downsize, they may want to turn their home over to their children and then maybe move into an in-law apartment or something like that. So
if I'm remembering correctly, I didn't fully come prepared for this, but if I'm remembering correctly, Burlington has kind of some wonky statutes on this, where if your house was built before a certain
convoluted,
year, you can,
I think that's a good description.
Yeah.
I think they're not very clear, and they're kind of strange, and that happens with zoning over time.
Yeah.
But yes,
so we might
they certainly want to provide some clarification there, and just see if it's an opportunity. Not sure if it is or if it isn't, but they definitely want to take a look at it.
American Rescue Plan Act recap proposals and closeout. What's going on?
That's one's kind of boring. We're probably about a year away from, the end of the American Rescue Plan funds. As you know, it wasn't really an exciting process for us here in Burlington, because at the same time we were awarded the ARPA funds. We were hit with the PFAS project for $15 million. So given the fact that we have a lot of large capital items on our near-term agenda, we felt it was best to utilize the majority of those funds to, reduce the cost of the PFAS project, and again, keep debt off of our financial situation, because as we know from our discussions, we have a police station, we have some work to do at the schools, so we're going to need to borrow some money. So a lot of towns had a lot of fun with their ARPA money in terms of, taking on projects that would, may beautify the town and things of that nature. But we tried to take a more practical approach, and, on a regular basis, the board asks us for an update as to where we stand on those. So that was what the nature of that
So we're
item
probably
was.
not doing like a puppy for every resident kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little frustrating seeing how other towns are utilizing it, but I'm assuming that they didn't get hit with a $15 million
Right.
bill. So we got about $8 million of ARPA, and we got hit with a $15 million bill. So we want to use the majority of that we didn't really use for pandemic-related expenses to reduce that debt.
Cool. Department structure and reorganization ideas.
This is something that we sort of have as a recurring theme during our strategic planning sessions. And, most recently we did a significant amount of reorganization on our financial departments in order to provide a good structure there. And it took place over several years. And sort of what we do under that agenda item is talk about whether there are other opportunities to sort of reorganize things on the organization chart, just to sort of provide for more efficiency and better communications and things of that nature. But there was nothing significant that came out of the discussion there.
I mean, this is something that came up at town, or at the select board a couple months ago now probably, but I think one of the potential options was turning your position into a town manager role instead of town administrator. Is that something that's being discussed, or are you able to talk about that?
That wasn't what we were talking about. We were
Okay.
talking more about the different departmental structure.
Okay.
But I think that's a standing agenda item that the board has taken up on government restructure.
Yeah.
So, I think it's something that's been in the back of the board's mind. And over the past few years, there formerly was a committee that looked into this. It sort of said we should look into future changes within the town, but it hasn't really gone any place from there. So I think it's more of an ongoing discussion. Some communities sort of look at these things like on a regular basis, whether it's every 10 years, they sort of take a look at the structure. And I think some of the board members would like to see an independent, commission sort of look at the structure of the town to see if we're operating as efficiently as we can, be if our structure is there to support that.
I mean, this is something that it's totally just something that I'm interested in as a person. I think government having conversations about how government could be different and better is just, I think it's interesting, but I will be interested to follow along as this develops.
Yeah, hopefully, like I say, hopefully it's a lot of work involved in it, and just to get those right people appointed to take a look at this as a really 20,000 foot look at it independently, I think is a worthwhile endeavor to do every so often.
Last item that you guys hit at this strategic planning session recently was the police station feasibility study. This is something that a lot of people are really interested in. What's going on?
Well, the first thing the consultant was going to do was try to evaluate our existing site just to see if it's capable of supporting a new police station. So that's the work that's being done right now. In addition to that, they are going to review an additional site that we asked them to look at, which is the Vinebrook treatment plant, which hopefully once the water situation is squared away will be decommissioned. And it's actually in a pretty good location on Middlesex Turnpike. I think the police department's wish and our elected officials would wish to maintain it on its current site. It's kind of a traditional thing to have the police station located in the center of town. We do have a beautiful campus-like setting in the middle of town as well. But a lot of it will depend upon the size of the site and how everything will fit in. So that's something that we hope to have back to be able to report to town meeting in September with some ideas about where it could go, what it might look like, and what the approximate cost would be, and then we'll take it from there.
Interesting. Is there any, I think the fire department now kind of has an outpost. Is that right? Is there any possibility that we could have Police Station 2 out at Vinebrook?
Yeah, that probably wouldn't be that efficient. I mean, I think we're a good-sized town, but land area-wise, we're still kind of small. I know with the fire department, it's sort of a little bit different because they're dealing with specific response times. But if you think about the police department, they're sort of all starting in the center, and then the patrol cars go out to their different sections, so they're already in their particular section,
Okay.
so that we have officers all over town on a daily basis, so the response time is already there.
Interesting.
But where you're talking about a fire station, they really put a lot of thought into where you site those so that you can get to everywhere in town within a certain amount of time is the goal. So.
Okay. Paul, those are the questions that I have for you this month. Is there anything else you want to say? Anyone you want to shout out before we close?
No, just looking forward to some warm weather this summer, and hopefully being able to relax a little bit, and, catch up on some rest.
Sounds good. All right, thank you very much for being here. This has been your town administrator update with BNEWS. Thanks for joining us.